Good morning, everybody. Yola, welcome to the KSM CME lecture series on Wednesdays. Today, we have a different kind of talk, which is for education and health. So let me introduce the speaker. Actually, he doesn't need much introduction, but he's the Professor Rasnayaka Mudiyanse. He's a professor in Pediatrics and in the Faculty of Medicine, University of Peradeniya. He got his MBBS MD and a member of Royal College of Pediatricians. And also, he's the Fellow of Advancement in Medical Education and Research in USA. His main research areas is development of the non-technical skills of the education, doctors, and also the medical ethics and the behaviors of the clinical society. And also, he is currently working as the member of Presidential Task Force for Education, and also he's a member of making the National Preschool Education. This is over to you, sir, to talk on health and education.
Thank you. I think it's a pleasure to come and do a lecture in the KSM, and would have enjoyed the audience here rather than talking to a audience not seen close by. Anyway, it's good. I selected this topic for a number of reasons. Now, I having got involved with education as a clinician, as a doctor, I have been working in the healthcare, but then I had my interest in education. In the process, I joined the university and continue to engage in education, but then real education is happening in school, in at home, and that area. So it's my interest has gone to that area now, and I strongly believe there's a strong connection between education and health. There are a lot of similarities in aspirations of education and health. And then I will show you that education is for primordial prevention of disease. Education is required for holistic development. And then education is important in managing toxic stress. And toxic stress is hindrance for education and health. And empathy and education can promote health. We'll see. What is health? Health is defined by WHO in 1948 as a state of complete physical, mental, and social well-being, and not merely the absence of disease or infirmity. It's very important. It's not just absence of disease. It's beyond that. It's more of a state as wellness. In fact, the definition has been expanded and say wellness is the optimum state of health of individuals and groups. There are two focal concerns: the realization of fullest potential of an individual physically, psychologically, socially, spiritually, and economically, and the fulfillment of one's roles and expectations in the family, community, place of work, and other settings. So it's not just you being healthy, but also the community where you live. So you have a contribution to make. So health is emotional, financial, occupational, social, environmental, spiritual, physical, and cognitive. So therefore, what I want to say is that the health has a wide scope: physical, mental, psychosocial, likewise, and there's a potential. We need to have a progressive development. It's not just a matter of being healthy and just stop there. Constantly you need to progress, and then it's not an individual pursuit. It's a community achievement. It's we achieve our healthiness as a community. It's not just one person. One person alone cannot be healthy, because your environment also got to be healthy, and you have to live in a healthy environment. So it's not a one person's pursuit. Then what is education? When you come to education, it was defined as a process of imparting and acquiring knowledge, skills, attitude, and values. And it is a process of changing behavior of persons. And it's not just a behavior of a person, but it's a process of transformation of a person and a society. And this is explicitly mentioned in this Santander Declaration, where they say underlines the need to address physical, cognitive, social, emotional, spiritual, and artistic development of the learner. It argues for a humanistic, inclusive, cultural, responsive, democratic, equitable, and holistic education across the world, and underlines the need for school communities to have a meaningful say in shaping and adapting the curriculum according to their culture and needs. So again, education also has a scope. It's not just cognitive, but also physical, psychomotor, psychosocial, spiritual, and economical. And there should be potential. The students should be able to maximize their own potential. And then education also not an individual pursuit. It's a community of learners. We learn as community, and we need to contribute for learning process, and we need to gain from the process. So education also not a personal pursuit. So that's a similarity. I'm sure you have heard of this primordial prevention. And if you really think of primordial prevention, look at the bottom line. Tertiary prevention is the one that we are sort of mostly embarking on, a process to reduce or limit impairment and disabilities by rehabilitation. And in hospital, what we do is mostly secondary prevention, where you detect your myocardial infarction or stroke early and do some correction and treat the blood pressure and teach the hypertension and things like that. That's secondary prevention. What is primary prevention? Primary prevention is a process of health promotion at population level or at risk strategies, where you talk about sanitation, infection control, immunization, protection of food, milk, water supplies, and that sort of thing. That's the primary prevention. And there's something beyond that. You will have to continue to give vaccination, continue to educate on sanitation and healthy process. But then unless you change this population, change people, the mindset, their paradigm, you need to change them. When you change that, that becomes primordial prevention. That's a lifestyle modification and building personalities. It's a personality process of building person. That's a primordial prevention. Now, if you look at the life cycle, we go through the infancy, preschool, school, higher education, and sort of so. And we have various types of behaviors, dietary habit, stressors, feeding, and unhealthy meals. And then you have a diet, lifestyle, you exercise, bad behavior, smoking, and end up in atherosclerosis, cancer, diabetes, and early death. Similarly, if you look at the psychosocial aspect of it, you have parental care, anxiety, and stresses, and then there's the issue of lack of respect, restrictions, and then you have forced to do things, and you have harassment and criticism, and then when it comes to higher education, there's ragging, abuse, and disruptions, and then at the end you will see homicide, suicide, abuse, and antisocial behavior. So as much as non-communicable disease have a root cause starting from the childhood, the antisocial behaviors also has a root arising from childhood. So therefore, I will conclude, or I will tell you that primordial prevention of antisocial behavior starts from child rearing practices and education. So if you want to prevent antisocial behavior, that should start from early infancy. It's on the child rearing practices. And so much so, this man says that education is a vaccine for violence. Education is a vaccine for violence. And Nelson Mandela says, education is the most powerful weapon which you can use to change the world. Now, if you look at this issue, now in the society, we are talking about prevention of homicide, suicide, abuse, rape, adultery, ragging, harassing, robbery, corruption. They are all bad behaviors of people. So we want to prevent them. We can use various sort of monitoring system, policing, restrictions, CCTV cameras and all that. You can control these things, but still there will be underlying disruptive behaviors, non-collaborative behaviors, conflicts and chaotic. You further restrict these things, restrict these things, you might end up in a society where there's no disruption, no conflict, no interactions also, and a peaceful society. Can we be happy with that society? Now, this is what we are trying to do. We try to stop ragging. Nobody is ragging now. We are very good. That's not going to work. Similarly, there's no, not having harassment, not having conflicts is not good enough. So that's not the healthy society that we are thinking of. The healthy society should have, they should be friendly, they should be empathetic, they should be supportive and collaborative. So that's a building up part of it. You need to build that. And that alone is not support. As individuals, having these qualities is not enough. You need to promote that. You need to appreciate empathy. You should appreciate collaboration. You should appreciate harmony. And at the end, the society as a community, as a whole, should be sort of champions and advocates of empathy, peace and harmony and collaboration. So that is the healthy society. We can't say a healthy society is just that no disruptive, no conflicts and nothing. So this has come as a real practical issue. In the process of prevention of ragging, what do you want? No seniors will talk to juniors. Nobody will talk to each other. No ragging. Are we happy? No, that is not what we should have. The same question is coming, prevention of sexual harassment, sexual abuse. So, okay, no problem. Now no boys are talking with girls, nothing happening, so no sexual harassment. Are you going to be happy? No, you can't. You need to go to this second limb, build the society. You see now, it's not a matter of building individuals only. The health is the entire society. So we should be able to build a society so that we have a society appreciating this type of lifestyle, this type of behavior, this type of attitudes, and this type of higher level of status in a society. So that's why this man says that the world will not be destroyed by those who do evil, but by those who watch them without doing anything. So we need to, as healthcare professionals, we need to take the leadership. We need to take a sort of, we should work on it. And we have a responsibility. We need to be advocates and then promote that health promotion, education as a part of health promotion. Education, the holistic education as a part of health promotion. The holistic education, not just this katapapadang education, where we sort of, teach something, you force them to remember, force them to vomit it, and then, it's done not by sort of maybe sort of hitting, it's not that, not physical force, but there's a lot of psychosocial, emotional force applied on our children to remember not so palatable, not so interesting stuff and vomit it. So that create stress. It's not a real holistic education. So we should use education for holistic development of the child. We need to let them grow. Where the public is not aware about the fact that 90% of the brain development happens before age 5. And when I say the public is not aware, the world is not aware. You see, not only the parents, not only the society, not only the educationists, politicians, nobody is aware about it. So much so the funding is not there. Now say, for example, preschool, there is no funding. Only general education has funding. Highest funding is going to higher education. You see, the higher university education is not the place you should have the highest funding. I don't know. That's my feeling. The preschool education, preschool teachers are not paid. It's very unfair for a preschool teacher not to have any payment. And some of the preschool teachers, they earn only about 5,000 rupees per month. So that's not the thing. During the period where 90% of the brain is growing, where you have to do a lot of work to facilitate that growth, to ensure that we are having a sort of correct type of growth. For that, you need to have a very special type of training. It's not just the training of a ordinary teacher or ordinary university teacher. We are all ordinary university teachers. We are not as big as a preschool teacher when it comes to the real education, pedagogy, the art of teaching. A preschool teacher has to be much more fluent than a university teacher. University teachers are, I don't know, I mean, the sort of, if you think of the craft of art of teaching, preschool teachers are at a very high level. Simple thing, I mean, I'm just pointing out one. We as adults think that children are small size adults. They are not. They are different. There are different animals, different species, and they are different. Problem is that children are not little adults with less capacities. No, they are different. And the problem is that you don't understand. When I say you, I'm addressing adults. Adults don't understand his thinking and approaches. So therefore, there's a lot of conflicts. And then you start saying that he's not obeying what you say, and these gadabbara lamai කියන දේවල් අහන්න මෙච්චර මහන්සිලා කැම් ටික හදනවා කන්නේ නැහැ. So that sort of thing starts. So that is harassment, and that causes stress. That is not good, and that creates a lot of problems in his mind. So therefore, now the scope of education has expanded. Now 21st century education is something this is being talked about for sort of so many decades now actually. 21st century education talks about the subject-based education that is shown in this column, and this is what we are embarking on, because our pass and fail distinction comes from this subject-based knowledge, where we are testing the knowledge, we are addressing those subjects. A pahai, B dekai, okkoma araganda. So that's from the sort of school to the university level also. But then in the middle, you have what is called competencies. Competencies are where your skills of dealing with the rest of the society, your communication, collaboration, critical thinking, creativity, impact. In fact, I have added here compassion, connectivity. So all that is important to deal with the society. And then the third column is your character within yourself, how good you are, how balanced you are, how strong you are, how capable you are yourself, where your curiosity, initiative, persistence or grit, adaptability, leadership, social and cultural awareness important. So as teachers, as adults, as parents, we should look at not only the subject-based knowledge, but also their competencies in communication, collaboration, creativity, and critical thinking and compassion, all that, as well as their character building, whether they are resilient, whether they are adaptable, whether they can tolerate things. So that should be looked at and try to teach it, try to inculcate it, try to sort of promote that. Unfortunately, many parents, many teachers are not capable of doing that. That has been recognized because it's difficult. It is not easy. It's not like teaching the subject-based knowledge. Now, giving knowledge is easy. It's not easy actually. The current context is it has become easy because you give the knowledge just to recall. I mean, if you want to deliver knowledge for the purpose of recalling, there's nothing to do. You read the book, you go to the internet, bring the information, and then show it to them, and then ask them to also to remember it. So, but then the real knowledge teaching for a purpose is a different thing. So there are the methods of teaching, they are describing. There are how to teach all skills. I'm not going to go into all these details. Anybody who is interested, I think, should read this. Can we teach competencies? Can we teach this character? And how are we going to teach? So I invite you to read and then think of it. Now, you can teach about these things. list එකක් වශයෙන් competencies කියන්නේ CA පහයි, communication, collaboration, creativity, critical thinking පහයි කියලා එහෙම උගන්වනවා. That is learning about it. Now, teaching to become a competent person is a different thing. That has to be done in a different way. And again, this Bloom's taxonomy, I think we should be aware about it. I'm not going to teach, I'm not trying to teach Bloom's taxonomy today. But what it says is, Benjamin Bloom's has suggested that don't just give knowledge for the purpose of recalling. ඒකට කියන්නේ inert knowledge. The knowledge without a purpose is inert knowledge. In fact, I remember reading an article written in long ago. He says sharing or giving inert knowledge to children is what it says that is bad. It's not a good thing, because they get used to appreciate the inert knowledge. Inert knowledge is where you have the knowledge that is not applied in life. It's not used. Unused knowledge is a bow or something like that. That's the word that was used. So the knowledge should be for the purpose of there should be comprehension. You should be able to analyze. You should be able to apply. Not only that, you should be able to create new knowledge from what you have learned. So for that, you should induce your children right from the beginning, preschool age, year 3, year 5, like that, sort of throughout the life. They are doing it, and we should promote that. But then learning is not only the knowledge, factual knowledge, you have to go up in this ladder, but not only the knowledge, there is conceptual knowledge, procedural knowledge, and metacognitive knowledge. Now that metacognitive part is something that is interesting, that is related to health directly. For an individual to know who he is, now metacognitive knowledge is where he identifies self and relate to the society, enhance own capacity of interactions, deconstructs one's own biases. He knows, why am I doing this? Why am I angry with this person? Why am I trying to compete with this person? So that's your metacognitive functions coming. And why did he do that way? So like that, reflect on own progress, innovate own life, and self-actualization. Now that is very important. This is something that is the education system is trying to introduce portfolios, and where you induce them to do self-reflection. So that's very important. And then not only that, this Maslow's hierarchy of pyramid is this Abraham Maslow says that children have needs. There's hierarchy of needs. At the bottom line, you need to have your physiological needs. They need to eat, sleep, drink, and then come to the safety. And they should have the love and belonging. Now that is very important. In your class, in your family, in your community, when somebody feels that he's not being recognized, he's not being respected, his opinion is disregarded, that disturbs him, and that hinders his progress, that hinders his process of thinking, his development, his sort of, that will be difficult. And then they should develop self-esteem. That's confidence, achievement, respect of others, and respect by others. So that's the esteem. And then come to a level of self-actualization. In fact, what we should try to promote is for them to achieve this self-actualization. Now after this Abraham Maslow's, people have started thinking beyond that, self-actualization, where you understand yourself, your morality, creativity, spontaneity, problem solving, like about yourself. But then transcendence is where you try to start understanding beyond that, where person who is self-actualized still may be threatened by somebody else. He compares whether he's doing better than me, whether I'm in the top, and things like that. Transcendence is where he's not threatened by opposing views. He understands that people have the right to have a different type of opinion, and they may be as correct as my opinion. And then he become a peaceful person who understands the world in a very neutral way. He's not attached to his own knowledge. He's not attached to his own capacities. He's not attached to his own capabilities, opinion, own truth. The people have their own truth. They are not so strongly attached to their own truth, and they are ready to sort of see the other side of the story and the deviation of his story and things like that. So that's transcendence. So as educationists, we should promote this type of growth of our children, which is not happening in a holistic way. So therefore, education for health, education is for holistic development. Holistic development is the health. The health is not just absence of diseases. It's a holistic development of a person. So therefore, it happens in the child development, teaching competencies, building character qualities, and developing metacognitive learning, and helping for health, self-actualization, and transcendence. Right, coming to the last part of my talk, stress. Now, we can contribute for prevention of stress. Why stress is important? In fact, if you look at it closely, stress is stress is good. Unless you are stressed, your performance is not coming to the maximize. If you want to maximize your performance, you need to have stress. There's a positive stress where it is stress, and there's a stress, and therefore you start working. You can't win the match without stress. You can't run the race without stress. You can't face the exam without that stress. You have to have that stress. It's good. That's healthy stress. But then when the stress is little too much, stress can cause a bit of a serious, there are physiological responses, you get a bit confused, and that's tolerable still, and you return. But then when the stress is too much and it is toxic, it is prolonged activation of stress response systems in absence of protective relationship. When there's child abuse, a child being sort of repeatedly blamed, shouted at, hit him, and various things, and that is toxic stress. And when the students are not being appreciated, always blamed, and they are sort of ignored, and they are criticized all the time, it creates toxic stress. So toxic stress is not good. Toxic stress is supposed to cause damage to the brain. If it happens in the growing brain, it damages the certain part of the brain that has been shown in PET scan. Now, this is a picture where a normal child and the abused child, you can see certain part of the brain is not developed properly in an abused child. And the toxic stress promotes secretion of unhealthy hormones, the hormones that create obesity, hypertension, atherosclerosis, conducive to develop diabetes, asthma, and other non-communicable diseases. So toxic stress is not good because it produces bad hormones, and it produces bad immune system. Immune system is get affected, these interleukins and various other things. I can't remember, there's a lot of description on that. And then the neurons, when it comes to neurons, there are neurons that is getting ready to fight stressors, fight challenges. And there are neurons, cognitive neurons, where you start thinking, arguing, criticizing, evaluating, building the knowledge. And that is marginalized because you are under stress. You learn stress handling. Even genes are changed by stress. Empathy is supposed to be supportive in very many ways. It is helpful in education. It prevents antisocial behavior. It prevents non-communicable disease, as well as empathy is helpful in prevention of communicable disease. I mean, we live as a society where we have empathy towards others, so that's going to help. And that prevents vicarious trauma in the health sector, and it improves therapeutic efficacy. Empathy is a method of primordial prevention of disease. For that matter, I believe that it's not just the empathy, but also emotional intelligence. I think commonly people talk about emotional intelligence now. I will show I will talk about the comparison of the two. Empathy, we need to understand empathy. I mean, you can see a name appearing here because we did this lecture for a group called towards Unity for Health. That's a WHO affiliated group where it was in I think there were 24 people from about 15 to 20 countries. And then we did this lecture there. So this lecture had 3 or 4 parts, and this was a lecturer from AHS did this part of the lecture. Empathy, we need to recognize empathy, differentiate empathy from pitying. Pitying somebody is not a good thing. It's a sort of, downgrading somebody. You are trying to dominate that person. Sympathy also almost there. You feel sorry for somebody else. No, I don't want somebody to feel sorry for me. I'm another independent, strong person. So empathy is good. So that person is parallel with me. We are sort of working together. But then he understand my predicaments, and he feel my predicaments, and he knows what to do. And then some people consider compassion is even beyond empathy. And I have my bias, or rather, I believe that compassion is more like karuna guna in Buddhist philosophy. So comparison of empathy and sympathy is a useful thing, and I think I have shown this slide in very many occasions. I like that slide, that's why I do that. Empathy is a non-spontaneous, intellectual, advanced, effortful appraisal of a situation, understanding of a situation. Whereas sympathy is an spontaneous, it's an emotional, it's primitive, effortless, it's an arousal, and it's more of a feeling. Empathy is a altruism, and it's a cognitive behavior. Sympathy is egoistic. There's some selfishness. It's about you that you are talking about, even though it sort of projects towards somebody else. And therefore, it's an affective behavior. Now, empathy creates separateness, sympathy creates closeness. Now, that is an important concept written by Mohammad Ras Hojad from USA. Now, this is very much closer to Buddhist philosophy. If you think of it carefully, empathy, if the empathy is creating attachment and closeness, probably Lord Buddha wouldn't have preached that. And he do not promote attachment. කරුණා මහා කරුණා ගුණය නිසා බැඳීමක් ඇති වෙලා අර අපි කියමුකෝ පටාචාරා ගැන බැඳීමක් ඇති වුණා නම් it would have been a disaster, it's a problem. So he wouldn't have promoted that. So empathy creates separateness. මට තේරෙනවා now, so I use this in counseling patients. Now say when you have a child, mother with a child who is having so much of a sort of impossible situation, say quadriplegic cerebral palsy, impossible to recover, and the mother is coming to me crying and telling this is what it is and what can I do, so various things. You start crying. There are so many mothers coming like that. I deliberately talk to them, a lot of empathy. I feel for them. I don't cry loudly, but then instances where I have tears in my eyes, I talk to them. I tell them, look here, now you are one person, this child is another person. It's not the same. And I'm a third person, another person. We three are, we don't have control on each other. That's the reality. But then, now look at this. Now you have been looking after this child, you are doing your job. See how beautiful you have dressed this child. And in spite of all his problems, he had been living now 4 years. So think about what you have done. And this baby is a separate person. He is not you, you're a different person. So you do your job and see what he can do. I will do my job by advising, giving drugs and all that. So there's we should understand we are separate people. So empathy creates separateness. It's a learned behavior in the neocortex, and it's parasympathetic, it's inhibitory and energy saving. And therefore, there's professional satisfaction and burnout is less likely. Whereas sympathy is create closeness, attachment. එකනේ අර මේ වාට්ටුවේ ඉඳලා ඩෙන්ගු බලාගෙන ගියපු ලෙඩා හොඳ වෙලා ගිහින් ක්ලිනික් එකට ඊළඟට එන දවසේ කේක් එකක් ගෙනත් දෙනවනේ. ඒ කේක් එක කාටද දෙන්නේ? කන්සල්ටන්ට් දෙන්නේ. ලෙඩා බලාගත්තේ කවුද? Nurse and the intern house officers and SHOs. And these people, they will come and say that, අපි කොච්චර මරුණත් වැඩක් නැහැනේ කේක් එකක් ගෙනත් දීහින් ලොකු සර්ට තමයි දීලා ගියේ. What is the reason for that reaction? You have an attachment. You believe that you did it, therefore you should get it in return. So those are sympathetic reaction. It's coming from limbic system, which is the primitive part of the brain, and it's sympathetic, excitatory, it's consume energy, and therefore it causes vicarious trauma, and burnout is likely. So I was talking about empathy, but then teaching about empathy does not inculcate empathy. That we should understand. Teaching about empathy, විභාගෙට ආපහු සැරයක් ප්‍රශ්න පත්‍රයක් දීලා empathy වල ලක්ෂණ මොනවද කියලා ටික් කරන්න පුළුවන්. That is not going to create empathetic people. That's teaching about empathy. Now we should think of how can we teach empathy. Teaching empathy is difficult. For that, you need to understand what are the empathetic competencies are. What are the behavioral, tangible behaviors of empathy? And then you should see that is happening and appreciate it, and then look at it. So then only you can sort of inculcate empathy. It's not teaching about empathy now. Now you can see that people can read the others' emotions. That is empathetic literacy. We should be able to appreciate that empathetic literacy and then promote that. කාට හරි දුකක් වුණාම අඳුනා ගන්න කොච්චර හොඳ දෙයක්ද. ඔයාට තේරුණා නේද නංගි දුකින් ඉන්නේ කියලා. කොච්චර හොඳ දෙයක්ද. So like that. And then you can see that empathetic perspective, they get into the same emotion. නංගි බබා අඬනකොට මල්ලිත් අඬන්න පටන් ගන්නවා. එයාටත් දුක හිතෙනවා. So that's an empathetic perspective. And then you should be able to communicate empathy. And you should be able to take action, empathetic actions. And you should have empathetic self-control. Just because you felt emotionally felt about a situation, you should have control, should get advice, should work with control. And then empathetic people look for collaboration, a community of learners, community of health people, and they get together, work together to do that. And then when you do something with empathy, you develop a moral identity, and a teacher or a parent should be able to recognize that you are proud about what you have done. No, what a good boy. So that interaction, that emotional appreciation is very important. So people will be proud about they have done. They have helped this beggar in the street and coming and telling the mother, they are proud about it. And that pride should be appreciated and encouraged. And then they should have the courage to do things, and they should dream about doing good things. Now say the children dreaming about becoming a good doctor, becoming a good engineer, they are all empathetic dreams. And then people will talk in terms of, we must change this. It's not good this to happen. Say, for example, the people rag each other, and that is not good. We must have a sort of community. We should get together and prevent this. That's a empathetic change maker. You want to make that change. So as teachers and adults, we should recognize these empathetic competencies in behaviors and then promote that and appreciate it. Now, just to compare this emotional intelligence and empathy. Now, empathy, I listed these 10 empathetic competencies. Emotional intelligence, there are two tools, GNOS and SUIT. In fact, currently the discussion is going on with the Australian University, Swinburne University. We are planning to use this tool to evaluate the empathetic competencies of school children as a national program. Currently, it's been discussed and we are sort of about to launch it. You can see that they talk about emotional self-awareness, emotional aggression, expression, emotional awareness of others, emotional reasoning, emotional self-management, emotional management of others, emotional of self-control. And you can see that all these things are embedded in these empathetic competencies I have listed. But then empathetic competencies are directed towards others more than self. So therefore, it's important to think of how to teach empathetic competencies. First thing is for us to recognize those empathic competencies and then start teaching. You can teach in the classroom setting. Most important thing would be the role modeling, and the teaching about empathy is important. But then you need to induce reflective learning by recognizing those empathic competencies, appreciating and talking about it. And then beyond the classroom, your conversation, events, incidents and projects, and the global empathy is important. I will tell what it is then. And then you can design games and simulations and role play, and that will lead to empathy, building empathy. You can teach about empathy, and then to do that, you need to ask the correct question. Whether you're asking the correct question matters. In the word round, you can ask a question to induce emotions and feelings and attitudes and that part. Or you can go back to a recall question. So depending on that, the students will get attuned to that. And then here the slide was teaching about empathy. Now I want to shift to the teaching empathy. Now teaching about empathy is one thing, teaching empathy is another thing, and the patient's narratives and how to enrich learning experience. Now you need to sort of, let the students experience that emotions, that feelings along with patients while talking, while working with them, and that should be encouraged, and we should sort of support that. And as teachers, we should model empathy, and the institution should model empathy. And then outside the classroom, you can get them to gather in groups and engage in conversations. Now, this is a method that they use in UK, Berlin groups, UK, USA, and Australia also there. Berlin groups, where general practitioners sit in a circle and then talk about their experiences. They talk about their patients. In fact, I I attend one of these Berlin groups in UK. Then get students to think about, get children to think about this type of situations, events, incidents, and various projects. And going beyond that, I think empathy is not about yourself, not only about yourself. මේකේ මෛත්‍රී භාවනාවේ කියනවා වාගේ මා නිදුක් වේවා නිරෝගී වේවා කියලා මං ගැන කියනවා. මම මේ ලියලා තියෙන හරිම හරි දන්නේ නැහැ. ඊට පස්සේ කියනවා මා මෙන්ම මගේ ඥාති හිත මාත්‍රා දින්ත නිදුක් වෙත්තා නිරෝගී වෙත්තා සුවපත් වෙත්තා කියලා කියනවා. ඊට පස්සේ මාද මගේ ඥාති හිත මාත්‍රා මෙන්ම අනිකුත් සියලු සත්වයෝද. මම හිතන්නේ මේ තුන්වෙනි වගන්තියෙන් කියවන්නේ global empathy. It's not just because you can see, because you are attached to, you can see, not beyond that, your empathy extends. That's a global empathy. Global empathy, teaching global empathies, you can induce students to think about, talk about global situations, and then induce them to think. And then the last one is simulation. You can act as patients, you can create role plays and scenarios, and through that you can teach empathy. So that comes to the end of my sort of talk. What my intention was to, you as doctors, you all as adults, parents, I'm asking you, engage in education, the proper education, holistic education, education that include building empathy, building competencies, character building, metacognitive building, self-reflection, all that. By doing that, you should be able to create a society, not just stopping these violence and things, but also building the empathy, building relationship, building positive attitudes, not within themselves, but those who are promoting those good attitudes, and creating a society where we hail the champions of those who are empathetic, those who are supportive, those who are collaborative. So that is what we should do. In fact, in that, I did not take this slide off. This is what we did in that the global symposia we did. At the end of the lecture, it was only half an hour, 20-minute lecture. And we had 3 rooms, breakout rooms, where they discussed these topics: how to make classroom interactions effective opportunities to teach, inculcate empathy. Now, I invite you to think of it. How can we make it better. Now say, I don't think I have given enough details of it. There are certain things that I do in the classroom. For example, in my classes, I have developed this habit of asking this question. At the end of the word round, I try to keep 10 minutes and then ask students, okay, right now our class is over in 10 minutes. Write down what did you learn today. It looks funny at times, students, what did we learn today? And they start writing. Then halfway through, when they start writing, I ask them, okay, write down the factual knowledge that you gathered. That's good. That's what you get for MCQ. But then write down conceptual knowledge. What concepts did you learn? And then, did you learn anything that will change your life? So you ask them to induce them to think whether I have learned something to change. That's a metacognitive learning. So as a teacher, I have found that is an effective thing. And then sort of always in the classroom, and they will talk about something very fascinating. I mean, very, very impressive. Say, for example, yesterday's class, I mean, it has happened several times. What they said is the most important that will change my life is the way you talk with that patient. So we had a patient who has sort of, ADEM, encephalitis, and the mother was clueless. And then in the class, I had to sort of, I felt that I stopped there and I sat with the mother and talked to her to maybe 2 or 3 minutes, and she was crying, and so I was emotional. So all that, and talked to her, and then at the end, when I asked the teachers, the students highlighted that is the most important learning point that they gave. I'm nothing else. I have taught a lot of other things, about febrile fits and encephalitis, upper motor neuron sign, lower motor neuron sign, spleen, various things. But the students highlight that is the point that we learn that will change our life. So we can do that in the classroom. And then how to make incidents, activities, and projects effective opportunities to teach empathy. We do various things, there are various activities, but then are we sort of inculcating empathy or emotional intelligence? Or how to create games and role play? And we should be able to create games and role play at home for small babies, for preschool children, school children, university students. There can be role play. So what my invitation is for you all to think of it. And in fact, in that international forum, there are very interesting suggestions what we can do to inculcate these things. I must thank those people who have joined with me in that. So, okay, the summary is, I will sort of, skip that. I have already given the summary. So again, I'm suggesting we need to expand our horizon of education to incorporate building personalities, creating healthy nation, not healthy individuals alone, healthy nation. For that, we have to take the leadership, and we have to sort of, guide the society. So we have a role of advocacy, role of taking the lead and being champions in the society. Thank you. Happy to answer any questions if you have. Yeah. Yeah. I have started thinking about it. My it's difficult to say soan my transcendence කියන්නේ එකයි කියලා හිතන එක වැරදි කියලා මට හිතෙන්නේ, because Buddhist philosophy probably looking at it in a slightly different way. Now education is looking at, now this is the education is prutajjana මිනිස්සු, the people with attachment, people believe that you are yourself and my society, my physical environment, my friends, relatives. Within that framework only the transcendence concept has come. But the Buddhist philosophy is going beyond that. No, the Buddhist philosophy start talking about there's no self, no attachment. So I think we are trying to reach the same thing, But then the Buddhist philosophy must be talking slightly different thing in the transcendence. It's not the sovan vima kiyala man hitanne. But then transcendence has a tinge of detachment. You detach not only from your physical belongings, but also you try to detach from your cognitive belongings. You know, as we learn, as we develop our concept, as we develop our things, you develop attachment to your cognitive things. No, you as a person, my knowledge, my opinion, this is my idea. When somebody talk against it, when somebody is not accepting it, you get depressed. See, these people don't listen to me. I have been telling so many times, and I mean it happens to us, and we have sort of get depressed, and then all of a sudden you stop thinking, why am I worried? Because he's not accepting what I said. When you start thinking, oh no, that is not what I should do. No, I mean he has a different opinion, I have another opinion, so that is okay. So we should accept. But then the sheer empathy, if that wrong belief is causing harm, I can go back and sort of try to change it. That's because of empathy. It's not because of my ego. Now the sympathetic person will have the attachment ego. Now say pirit වතුර බීලා කොවිඩ් වළක්වන්න බෑ. ඒක හින්දා ලොකු හානියක් වෙනවා. So if I'm doing with my ego, I will go and fight. I will start sort of killing, and not killing in the sense, aggression. But then if I'm doing it with empathy, I will feel sorry for that person, and I am really sort of, upset. I have my global empathy, and I will start talking about it and try to tell them what I'm telling, and it's a different approach. That's what my feeling is.
Actually change makers in terms of the one the last talk.
That's right. Yeah. Change makers.
Actually, they are really important change makers, or is it empathetic people?
Yeah. I think the audience should give the answer, ma'am. Are the political arrogance? Can you recognize political arrogance as change makers? I'm sort of asking the extreme question so that we can understand the question. What? I'm sure you have opinion. Kian? I think it's a matter of whether you are an empathetic. Empathetic change maker. The empathetic change maker. Now Hitler also was a change maker, no? And he was not an empathetic change maker. No? He has he probably self-actualized, but he did not have transcendence. He is self-actualized. He believed that you can purify the society, and we want to have this German society like this, and then he want to change it, and he was changing. It's a bit of a change maker in that sense. But then it was not empathy. He was not transcendence. He was not accepting anybody else's view and things like that. To some extent, no. I think he. Yeah. Yeah. Probably the Mangargadalpa would have been a sort of had that level of transcendence. No, they probably would have sort of worked with empathy rather than sympathy. Now, many of these also they were. They had the chance. They were not looking at although they represented the ethnicity, but they never. That's right. Yeah. They imposed the ethnicity on exactly. Exactly. So now, another aspect of we don't want to separate. Exactly. Not as one country, not separate. Yeah. Now, I mean, many political ventures are based on sympathy, if at all. So there's an attachment. They expect a vote in return. Chande dunne නැත්නම් බනිනවා උන්ට අඬනවා ඡන්දෙ දුන්නේ නැහැ කියලා. So that is because they have not done with empathy. And those who do not go into a transcendence, you can't sort of have real empathy. Now this Maslow's hierarchy of need, he built it in hierarchy, but then I have a personal feeling that it's not really correct here. Then Bloom's taxonomy එකෙත් hierarchy එකක් හැටියට තියෙන්නේ. ඉස්සෙල්ලා කරුණු දැනගෙන අවබෝධ කරගෙන ඊට පස්සේ apply කරලා analyze කරලා එහෙම කියලානේ. I don't think it happens that way. It's not essentially. Now people have education have start writing not Bloom's උසට නෙමෙයි circle එකක අඳිනවා සමහරු. That means sort of probably you start learning because you have applied something. You experience it and then you sort of write the factual knowledge. So that can happen.
Yeah, now they do the problem.
Started the problem. Yeah, that's right. Yeah, and the same thing in the Maslow's hierarchy of needs also. Your self-actualization is not essential to have food and shelter. Under බොණ්ඩ නැති දුගේ පැලේ එක්කෙනෙකුට self-actualization වෙන්න බැරිද? කාලා බීලා වෙන්න ඕනද? It's not necessary. So that's a bit of a it's a good thing. I mean දැන් බුදුහාඳුරුවෝ කියනවානේ කාලා දීලා කණ්ඩ දීලා ඉන්න කියලා සාකච්ඡාවට කලින්. That is okay, that's good, but then මේ ගලේ කෙටු වපුරක්සේ ඒක හැම වෙනවා කියලා හිතන්න අවශ්‍යතාවයක් නැහැ. There's a sort of mixture of things happening. But ultimately what I can see is everybody is looking at the same thing, no? In health or education or sort of Buddhist philosophy or any other philosophy. Now we are changing from the selfishness to a work in a community and respect the others and then work with the others and have a global community of learners, community of people who are sort of progressively developing our health. Okay. Sure.
There's a change in the gender ratios in many higher education institutions, not only there. Is it a result of inaccurate teaching or learning methods? Or is it not a change?
Sorry, okay, I'm not taking actually get the initial part.
There's a change in gender ratio.
Gender ratio, all right, okay, right.
The country. Sri Lanka, we can clearly see that in medicine. Is it a result of innate educational methods or knowledge transfer? Is it a change?
Today I got a call from because now it has changed complete and some of the lot of surgeries going on. We left out because there was a real problem and they want
Yeah, the question becomes relevant to this lecture because your question is whether the female preponderance is as a result of innate knowledge transferring system. So ප්‍රශ්නේ එහෙම දැම්මම now we have gender bias හැවිතරනේ උන්ට ගුටි කන්න වෙනවා දැන් එළියට යන්න කලින් we sort of degrade or we sort of consider the innate knowledge transfer is a more primitive, not so advanced thing. එතකොට ඒක primitive වැඩේ හින්දා ගෑනු ළමයින්ට පුළුවන් ද කියන ප්‍රශ්නේ අහන්නේ දැන් ඔය පලියක් දාගන්න නිකන් නිදානින් නැතුව මොකක්ද ඔහොම කියන්න පුළුවන්ද yeah but yeah she has transcendence. Yes, but then we can put the question in a different way, no? A different way. The female preponderance may be because of the commitment of girls over males. The females have a commitment towards the society and they just don't want to waste, whereas males are not like that. female by gender, they have this desire or the capacity or the sort of want to look after children, want to look after the family. So they for that purpose, they have a more of a responsible behavior, and therefore whatever the situation comes, they work hard and do better. Whereas boys have a tendency to be ignorant about it. So I think that is the reason. The females' responsible behavior has created more female preponderance in a competitive situations than males, where intellectual capacity is used. I mean, we criticize using these recall questions, but then it's not only recall questions, no. Even to remember a recall facts, they should apply it. Then it becomes easy to remember. Otherwise, it's difficult to remember. කටපාඩම් කරගෙනම එහෙම කර දැන් අපි ගමු people the exam එකේදී අහන්න recall questions උනාට it's easy to remember if you are applying it while reading. I think the girls are doing that. So, with lot of respect for female gender, I think we should respect females. They have come forward as responsible citizens because it's a responsibility to learn, and they are not ignorant about learning. So the female gender should be respected for their sort of advance in learning. Harana shape ni දැන් අපි නිකන් පචල්ලා නැහැ නේද? උන්දරනේ.
Don't know whether I could get that.
Yeah.
So whether the
නෑ නෑනේ මචං දැන් engineering වලත් ඉස්සරට වැඩි දැන් කෙල්ලෝ ඉන්නවා. There's a trend, the girls are මට හිතෙන explanation එක අරක තමයි. The females are more committed and they are responsible behavior. දැන් ඕක මේ වෙන රටවල ලොකුවට තියෙනවා නේද කොල්ලෝ ඉගෙන ගන්නෙම නැහැ කියන එක. Now the one important thing that in our country that we have not exploited is that the keenness to learn. දැන් ළමයි උනන්දුවෙන් ඉගෙන ගන්නවා කියන එක හැම රටේම තියෙන එකක් නෙමෙයිනේ. They don't learn. So අපේ එහෙම නෙමෙයිනේ අපි කොච්චර නීරස ප්‍රෝග්‍රෑම් එකක් දුන්නත් උන් කොහොම හරි මහන්සිලා ඉගෙන ගන්නවානේ. homework එක කරගෙන එනවානේ. වෙන රටවල එහෙම කරන්නේ නැහැ නේ. මොනවද ඉගෙන ගන්න ළමයි නැහැ. ටිකක් ඉන්නවා but not everybody. Okay. Right. Shall we? Thank you then. Thank you very much.
First of all, I need to apologize for being missing first few minutes of the lecture, which was very interesting. And I'm also thankful to Prof. Mudiyanse for bringing this forum to a different dimension and giving some thought-provoking ideas. Actually, I think it is important because it's not only for the university community that this lecture is important, because I think every medical personality here, whether it's in the government sector or the university sector, are engaged in teaching at various levels. That is one aspect. So the other aspect is, I mean, as he mentioned about the change in the community, all that. So I think this is actually something which needs to be discussed as a workshop or sort of over 1 or 2 days time, and which is, in my personal belief, I think that it's kind of thing that which is necessary. So that's why we have included this kind of thing in the initial objectives of this year's activities as education. So I'm very thankful that we could at least in this way have this segment, and we hope to make it more in the future. And one other thing that they have assessed how a successful clinician or a career after a medical or even dental path has happened. Out of all the assessments, they have found that peer review has come as the first, not from the medical community, but from all 360, from the work aides and nurses and other people. They have given a rate that has, given the maximum accuracy when thinking back of the person's career success. So I think all that, I think those can be changed with your lecture. Now we see that those particular characteristics can be changed with the education. So with the outcome-based education. So I thank you very much. And I would like to invite, I think, our incoming president, Dr. Kanchana Singh, Chief Surgeon from the National Hospital, candidate to deliver give away the certificate of appreciation to Dr. Mudiyanse. Thank you very much for participating. I think we have prepared some refreshments. Please, all of you join for the